welcome everyone to Brian Sebastian's movie reviews and more. It's great pleasure for myself to be inviting my friend from Canada, Keith McCleary. I was just recently asked to do a contributing article for Michael Neely's XS10 magazine, and I could select anyone that I wanted. And I know that I'm always a big believer in putting forward people that are inspiring, hard workers, determined, and the only person I could truly think would fit all those things is our guest today, Keith McCleary. He's a street smart, book smart. He's got great instincts in everything that he does. He has a very successful podcast that was named by New York Weekly Times as top 10 of the best podcast radio shows in the world. He has millions of viewers and followers. He's very inspiring because he's a risk taker. So if you're 16 or if you're 46 and you're not sure what path to take, listen to his show and follow him because he's a guy's guy. He's that guy that all us girls admire and, hope to catch the eye of. He's also a gifted artist. He has a fashion line. He's a tattoo artist. And he was also a successful MMA fighter. So he's got that mind-body successfulness going on. It's either one or the other, but Keith has it all. He's an actor. He's a humanitarian. And they just did a very successful documentary about his life that we should all watch and see. It's called Tatnus, The Other Side of Hell. Everyone, it's a great honor to welcome my fellow Canadian, Keith McCleary.
Yeah.
Wow, dude.
Keith, what is it about you Canadians? You guys have so much talent there that's always come through.
Right.
Some of my best friends and really good people have been from Canada, and that's always been my second and or third favorite country, depending on if I'm going to Australia, if I'm going to Canada. That's why I say that.
Or if he's got two Canadians on the show right now.
Oh man, I don't even know where to begin with all that. That's high praise. Hopefully I can live up to all that now.
Well, what drives you, Keith? Like you've taken a chance on a path, like most people, we've got a hill to climb, but you seem to have a hill to climb with a backpack full of rocks, and each path, it's never been in the same avenue. You've gone fashion, MMA, you're now a successful talk show host. What is it that drives you?
I think it's a mixture of things. I'm really spiteful. I grew up in a really toxic house where, most people, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people have like that typical support. I didn't really have, traditional like parents, so to speak. I never knew my mother. My father was pretty abusive, like mentally and physically. So it's like, anything that I planned to do in life, it was like, why bother? Because, you're never going to be capable of doing such a thing. You're not going to be anything. So it was kind of like, okay, I left home at 15 and I lived on the streets for a while in Brampton, Ontario, until I could make enough money working a factory job to get a place. And, I was one of those people, I'll never ask anybody for anything. I earn what I have or else I die trying. So I think over time, it just kind of became a motivation to kind of shove those words back down people's throats that, tried to tell me I wasn't going to do anything. And I think because of the life I had, people felt it was a foregone conclusion, like, oh, with a life like that, it'd be understandable if you don't do anything, and I was like, nah, that's not happening, So I think I learned pretty quick that as soon as you kind of don't get in your own way, so to speak, like if you don't create barriers in your own head, then there's really nothing you can't do. So it kind of just snowballed where it was, once I accomplished one thing, it was like, whatever I find an interest in, I'm going to pursue it and not kind of pigeonhole myself into one thing. And, I have that like artistic element. So I love art of all types. So it's like, there's that interest there that I'm always going to pursue that. But then I also have a gym obsession So, I mean, I'm 6'5", 265. I used to be like 6'5", 180. I was super thin. Um, and then one day I just went into the gym and never left. So, um, it's kind of like I have two different therapies, art and the gym. So, I think there's, those two aspects. I find things that interest me and I just go for it. So,
I think you've always been an inspiration for a lot of people around the world, just checking out things. And then your art is fabulous. And I was telling you about that, I think last week when we spoke. I think I got into art late. Maybe I've always liked it, but didn't really pay attention so closely. Now I really pay attention to it. And I love the stuff that you've been creating. Um, do you have, because I haven't seen it yet, do you have like sweatshirts and stuff that you made up with your name and everything on it yet? Or are you just creating things, whatever comes up with you?
yeah, like my brand, everything that I've designed is just the brand name, but in graffiti or tattoo style font. It's kind of a mixture of tattoo culture, graffiti culture, because I love graffiti as an art form if it's done right and it's not just vandalism. That was someone that did something with no talent whatsoever. It was just for the sake of doing it. If it's done well and it's like a mural or something, I think it's really hard to do. So I respect that. Yeah, I just combine different styles, and that's what my clothing line is basically. So there's a ton of it.
Jerry, I have
Keith, how did you come?
Jerry, I
Go
think I'm
ahead.
going to start wearing some of his things because I like his art.
Oh, he's got great clothes. And anyone out there watching the show, he's got beautiful models. So, it's all good. Keith, so your show, you call it the Tatness. That's part of being a tattoo artist?
Yeah, that was I think I killed the mystique on that a little bit because people ask me that a lot, and it's like, I think they're expecting some earth-shattering story, and it's just like, I had a tattoo client one time when I lived in Niagara Falls that honestly couldn't remember my name for the life of him, and just came up with that as like what he would refer to me as. And then I guess other people heard it and they just went with it, and then it was like, okay, that stuck. It became how I was known all over Niagara region. So then it was like, okay, I'm going to brand this, man, because at this point, it works. And because I'm also covered myself, so easily identifiable, and it just worked. It just took off as, how people knew me. So it's like, why not brand? Like these days you have to brand yourself. I think it's much easier. That way, everything I do is under that umbrella. It doesn't matter if it's a clothing line or if it's my network for other shows or anything. Basically, I slap that name on it so people know who did it, and it just works. It's kind of a uniform thing now.
Keith, with the diversity of your businesses, what is it that you look for that determines you stepping into it? Because as we've mentioned, you've got clothing, tattoo, you had a pub. What is it that triggers you to think, yeah, I'm going to give it a go?
I've always been business minded, and I find that kind of fun, the challenge of it all. It's really funny. I think that started when I was a kid. I had this old computer game, and I had a Commodore 64. It's garbage. But I had this game for it called Lemonade Stand, and it sounded pretty basic. But as things picked up, you had to adjust your pricing. If you got too greedy, nobody buys anything. If you're, not charging enough, you still have to buy the ingredients. So then you're going broke. And it really taught me at like 8 years old the basics of business. So I kind of got into it, the challenge of it all, and finding that right balance of being profitable but still keeping people happy. And I think that stuck with me. I think that in itself is an art form. So at the time of the bar, when I took over, I was working for a restaurant. It was the first time, because I love cooking, but it was the first time I ever did that kind of work. I always said I'd never do any kind of restaurant work because it's so stressful. And I didn't want to like hate cooking because of it. And it was super stressful. I had no choice at that time. I was kind of looking for work that was going to pay well. And they were in a bind and they needed somebody like, immediately. So I went in, and within the first day I became management, which was weird. And then they realized I had a business mind. So they were like, we're not doing well. What can we change? And so I gave them a bunch of, advice on what to do, but they were in a small town that wasn't really wealthy. It was more of a retirement area and a military area. And so, and the owner was actually, the two owners were military themselves. And I became friends with them, and I told them, if you want my honest opinion, pull the plug on it, because at this point, you're 9 months into a 2-year lease and you're 60,000 in debt. It's not going to turn over. Yeah, it's a little too late for that. So a couple of weeks go by, and I came into work, and they kind of said, hey, can you keep something to yourself for now? I said, sure. And they said, you might want to find another job, because we're going to do what you said. We're closing the doors. So I was like, okay, fair enough. And they said, hold on, come with me. And we went across the parking lot to the strip mall and went into a bar. And he talked to the owner and said, you've been saying you're kind of, in trouble here. This is your guy. Make him your partner and he'll turn this around. And so I spent about 2 weeks going over there just negotiating, and we worked out a deal, and I ended up doing that for a while. And then I decided to go to college, which of course I got a lot of being, 15 when I left home and being on the streets or whatever. I didn't exactly get the opportunity to finish high school. So I had to drop out just to work full time. So everyone thought, okay, there's no way you're going to get into college as a high school dropout, especially for business accounting. But I did. So I left the bar and I decided to do that. Then I signed up for the military and I qualified for the trades I wanted, but they said there's like a 3-year wait list at least to get in because they're so booked. And I was like, well, I got to do something. So in the meantime, I guess with my love for the gym, because of preparing for the military, MMA just felt like a natural choice. So I went with that and never did go to the military. Never happened. It's the best thing that never happened to me. So
I had some friends of mine, and we were watching a couple of your fights, and I don't know the language, but they were in awe of your, again, coming back to your instincts, because the one particular fight that stands out for me is the one guy was just giving his all, and you were just kind of dancing, and then all of a sudden the 1-2, like you're very calculated, and yeah, you were a really good showman in the ring.
I feel like everything is strategy based, and the second you take things personally and let it get to you, you make mistakes, because now you're kind of working off emotion rather than common sense and strategy. I just had Dean on my show and we were talking about boxing and why Ali was so great, because he got you mad and then you made mistakes. Instead of waiting for you to make mistakes, he caused you to make them. And I thought that was brilliant. Sometimes you got to be patient, and I'm not a patient person, but it really does come in handy. But I think out of everything, the gym aspect of it is what I love the most. I'll spend 4 hours a day in the gym, no problem. Right now, I feel like I got hit by a bus because every muscle hurts. It's so bad.
The funny thing is, Keith, is that we were talking about back in the day when I was with the Gracie Jiu-Jitsus, and we were the early 90s, before when it was a real octagon in the cage and there was no weight limits or anything like that. You just had two fighters and how it would normally be. And it's up to you to beat that person, whether you outweigh them by 150 pounds or whatever. And that's why I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at that point. I still do, is because once you are on your back, that's where you're at home at that point. If you know how to get out of that, that was it. And we were always that traditionalist when it came down to, okay, so what's more real? Was it the boxing? Was it the wrestling? MMA? Who would win? And you could still kind of talk about it to this day, but it still comes down to the street smarts, being patient, and outmaneuvering. And then everybody has a bad day.
Absolutely. I agree with that completely. And I miss those days of having no weight limit because 265, I'm literally at the limit. So it's it kind of, I don't know if they should get rid of the weight limit or if they should create like a super heavyweight, you know what I mean? And just let, 265 and up just pummel each other. I mean, yeah, I love the aspect of two different styles just kind of clashing because you never know. It's anybody's fight at that point. You don't know who really is going to, like you said, could be an off day. It could be one style superior to the other. It doesn't, it's not hard to figure out. But we were talking last night about I was super fortunate enough to meet on a couple of occasions George Chavallo,
Yeah.
who awesome guy. And, for him to be somebody that wasn't necessarily taken all that seriously and then ends up being the toughest dude that Ollie ever fought, it was just, it's cool, and the fact that he's Canadian doesn't hurt nothing, but he was such a nice guy, man, and really smart, and just picking his brain was having that opportunity was super cool.
Talk about when you decided to all of a sudden you're doing shows. Did you think 4 years ago you were going to end up doing a podcast radio? And I call it radio podcast because it is kind of in the same genre. So I give respect to those people. And I've always been open to, if I don't care where you came from, give that person an opportunity because you never know. It's just like when you were thinking about going to school. I think of John Tapper because one of my favorite shows was Bar Rescue. In the U.S., you've got 6,500 bars that go out of business each year. One of my favorite shows on the Bar Rescue is watching how they screwed up, whether they started drinking behind there, doing shots, and I'm sure you saw that stuff because that's where a lot of it went out. So again, taking what you saw, putting it into this, I'm not surprised that you ended up in the top 50, and good for you.
Oh, thanks, man. Honestly, it never crossed my mind. And as I was training and doing other things, I had a bunch of pros around me that kept telling me, like, you need to do a show, dude, because you're so opinionated, but at the same time, you make sure that your opinions are educated. You're not just saying things because it's how you feel. You look into things and make sure that you don't sound like a total tool, but and sometimes, I'm completely wrong. But I'll be the first to say, okay, you know what? I kind of fought for that pretty hard and I wasn't even right. My bad. This one's on me. But I try to do my research, and after a while, I think people kind of convinced me to do it because I had no real it's not that I didn't really have interest. I just thought, man, everybody's doing that. So I didn't know I was going to do it. And then I guess with the hiatus from MMA because of my son's condition, I decided, you know what else do I have going on, man? To entertain myself and kind of keep myself occupied besides just the business. And there's a lot of conversations to be had. So I thought, maybe I will, but I thought because I've taken so much time away, I was like, no one's going to listen to this. Like, I'm probably not even relevant anymore. Like, I'd be happy if 100 people actually cared. And then it blew up and I was like, oh, I had no idea. So it's like, okay, now I got to take this really seriously because there's a responsibility I feel that comes with it where you got to address certain things that maybe people need to hear, you know what I mean? And not treat it like a joke. So I had to get a little more serious about it and the numbers just kept climbing. So at first I'd be lying if I said it was like something I always wanted to do or was on my radar, because as much as I had an interest in it, I didn't really think I was going to actually do it. And then it just happens.
Your show, the Tatnus podcast, you have a really great ability to draw things out of people in a comfortable manner. Like I listened to a few people, again, you and I've talked in the past about Kenny Olson, your soul brother, and you were talking to Steve Perkins, and I watched you on a few other shows, and as a female, for all the ladies out there, it's one of those things where, the men, you have a different perspective on things. So it's really interesting for me to see your take and hear your take and how you see things. It's like being a fly on the wall, because, I'm often laughing but it's genuine. It's fun. You've got a bromance with, many of the people that come on, but it's a kind, and it's not mean, but yet you still learn so many things. Like we've had Steve Perkins on our show, and you brought out some really interesting perspectives on there that I hadn't heard, and I thought I did my homework. So I think that is one reason why your show is really great. But what do you think is what resonates with so many of your viewers?
Oh man, I appreciate that. I always thought that I just get people to talk more because they want me to shut the hell up, but I have no idea what it is. I think maybe there's a few factors. Like I don't really get into politics. I hate that. I try to steer clear of that, or divisive things. Like I'm going to say some things that people aren't going to like, I'm sure. There's times where I'll say something and it's how I truly feel, and I reiterate so people know not to I always find a way to make sure that people can't twist what I say. So I will clarify, I know I'm not saying this and I'm not saying that, because I know how people love to do that. And I just take away their excuses. But I'm always, straight up about how I feel about things. And I think people kind of accept or appreciate that I don't look for topics that everybody's talking about because it's going to bring in listeners. I kind of go the opposite. Like with the COVID thing, I'm like, if you want to listen to that, go to CNN. Like, I'm not an expert. I'm not going to tell you I am. I'm not going to act like I am. I'm going to stay away from that subject, unless it's about how it's affected my guests or something. But other than that, it's not really for me. And I think people just appreciate that when I say something, they know that for better or for worse, if I say it, it's kind of my hill to die on, and I mean it, and I'm convicted by it, and I stand by it. Not that I can't be convinced otherwise. If enough facts come my way, I'll gladly say I was wrong. But otherwise, I say things just to pander to people, to get them to listen to the show. It's pretty straightforward, and I try to approach things with at least a bit of humor to it, because I don't see a point in taking things way too seriously, because there's enough of that. It's to me, it's like, if you want to be given some kind of entertainment, then that's what I try to do. But if you want a news source, there's plenty of them out there. It's just not for me. And I think people might appreciate just that break in the monotony, because everybody seems to gravitate towards jumping on what's trending so they get more listeners. And I just think that's cheap and lazy.
Well, I think that's important, and I try to do similar to you. If you say something, it won't hurt you or bite you. In 2 years' time, your perspective is your perspective. But at the same time, being fearless. But as also, your show 5 years from now, you'd go back and watch the Tatnus podcast, and it would be applicable then. And I like that you say, I don't want to focus on today's headlines, because nobody's going to go back and watch that. You know what I mean? Like, I think people want to know what they want, escapement. I think they want to be, it's not going to be, oh gosh, that's 30 minutes, I'll never get back. So I think, and for me, that's why I really enjoy your show, is because if I want to watch it again, it's going to be fun again, so it's one of those. But Brian, I'm going to switch topics here. One of my little things about Keith that I really like is when he makes his own barbecue sauce, and I can't wait to try it. He has this little thing, and part of it's maybe it's his therapy, maybe it's his instincts, but when he makes his barbecue sauce, he has to have Rick James playing in the background.
Wait a minute, Rick James?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny.
Yeah, I
I
think
play
it
Rick
gives that
James. I don't
extra
play.
kick and excitement.
Well, you know, it's funny. I don't play Give It To Me, play Baby. I play it Come Into My Life every day. I play it Hard to Get every day. And I play High on Your Love Suite every single day. So that's the first time I heard that. Good for you. See, Sherry, I like him even more, even though I already liked him.
That gets him every time. No, that's why I thought, oh, he's got to have some spicy barbecue sauce.
It's such a bizarre thing too. It's one of those weird things that just happened one day, and then it became every summer. This is what I do, and it has to be Rick James, just because. I don't know. It just started that way, and that's the way it stayed, and it works for me. I don't know what it is, but every time, it's kind of like that it's like in the summer. Everybody knows I barbecue every day. I eat steak all the time, so I'm always using my charcoal barbecue, and I love it. So it takes a lot of protein to get to 265 and stay there. So I got to eat a lot of protein, right? So I love barbecue sauces, and I just started making them, and I have all different types, like jalapeno honey, which is awesome for like wings and ribs, and then I have like chipotle, a really hot one for beef, things like that. So there's something for every type of meat, and it's always Rick, man. I don't know why, but
Is it a Rick song per flavor, or is there a Rick format that you follow from beginning to end of the process?
the format always seems to start with Mary Jane, and then whatever plays after that. And I'm not going to get into why, because people can figure that out. But
Has anyone asked you yet to be able to bottle it and sell? I know I want it. I know when I come east, I'm definitely going to, that'll be one of my first stops, is coming and getting some.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, a few people have suggested it. I used to, back when I started this, before I was doing any of this, I was working a regular 9 to 5 years ago. I worked with some people that I would just bring some in and give it to them. And this one guy, within 2 days, said it was gone. And I was like, how the hell did you go through all that? He's like, I made a barbecue pizza, and instead of pizza sauce, I used that as the base. He's like, it was so good. I was like, okay, that's different. But people basically said within a week they had it gone. They used it for everything. So I was like, okay, it must be all right.
Keith, what's your daily workout regimen? And then talk about your documentary.
Oh, man. I work 4 hours a day in the gym typically on a good day. I basically just pummel the muscle until it can't do anymore. And it works. I have like weird things that I do that people look at me like I'm insane. For my son, for example, his first birthday, because they gave him 2 weeks to live, when he turned 1 year old, I started on his birthday. I did 365 straight bicep curls, one for every day that he fought to be here.
Wow.
And then the second year, I doubled that. And basically, people are like, oh my God, that looks so sore and tiresome. And like, it is, but his condition caused seizures all the time. And being just a year old, 2 years old, it takes so much out of the child. And it's like, you know what? He didn't have the luxury of saying it hurts and it's exhausting, so I'm just not going to have seizures anymore. So my mindset was, it hurts like hell, it's exhausting, but I don't have the luxury of quitting neither. We suffer together, so I wouldn't stop till they're done, until I've gotten every rep out. And then when I'm done, I can't lift my arms for like 2 days. And there's video of it too, and you can see how swollen, like how pumped full of blood my biceps were. It was exhausting, but and I had to do it within an hour because the gym was going to close. So I had no excuses, no rest periods, just have to hammer it out. So, the documentary was kind of like, oh man. So basically it's about like my life and how dark that was, because a lot of people don't realize just how, I didn't, at one point I was like, I don't want to do this. And I had a couple people say like, you need to, because it's for you, like therapy wise. But more importantly, I felt like it's for anybody that might be going through something like that, like a brutal life where it all started just against you. And I wanted to show people like, it doesn't matter. Like the hand you're dealt is irrelevant. It's how you play it. It doesn't matter how bad it may be. You can change it. You can do whatever you want to make it better, but that's on you. There's nobody else, no matter what they say, what you can and can't do, things like that. They're not living your life. They're not the ones that have to put in the work. They're not the ones that have to pursue it. That's all you. So how are you going to let someone's opinions stop you from doing what you want? So it just became a motivation to, even though you're sick of cameras being in your face and, eventually it's like you kind of have to just go through it. And a lot of it's about how my grandparents raised me for the first 6 years of my life. And literally as I was filming, I was finished the segment talking about my grandfather. A few days after that was filmed, he passed. So there's a lot going on while filming, and it's like, man, you got to keep going. There's a deadline, and get it done. And so it's out now. It's on DVD. It's on the website, katnissco.com. It's available there. So there's the clothing, there's the documentary, there's coffee cups and stuff like that. But it was nice to finally get it out because now it's out, it's on DVD. I don't have to do it anymore. I don't have to film anymore. And you get some semblance of privacy back.
Have you had a chance to watch it? Because it's not easy to watch when you were going through that stuff, because I always tell people when documentaries are made on them, most everybody says no, because they're going to be prying into stuff. And then when you don't feel like doing it, what you just talked about, those are those key moments, because the end result is what you just said. People can be able to relate to it because they go through it at the same time. They just don't always acknowledge it. And then they find out what it may be like to have a camera on you when you don't want to have a camera on you, sometimes 24/7.
Right. And yeah, it's funny. I have watched it back, but at that point, people laugh at this because, it's brutally honest, but it's like, I've had to oversee the editing process because I'm so hands-on with everything. I want to learn everything. So I've overseen the editing process. I've had to watch the same things over and over so many times that, like, when I watched it now, I hate it. Like, I'm so tired of it that, other people seem to like think it was really good. And I'm like, that's great. You paid for it. I'm glad you like it. I've just seen it so many times at this point that I'm so tired of it. Like, I have to wait a few months and then go back to it with like fresh eyes, I think. And then it'll be all right. But yeah, I think it's too soon.
We got a couple minutes left. Go ahead, Sherry.
Keith, and you've mentioned briefly today about your son, who was a beautiful, beautiful young boy.
Thank you.
Sherry, you hit your sound by accident. Ooh, she can't hear me. Keith, can you hear her?
Not at all, no.
Sherry, your sound went off for some strange reason. She can't hear. Oh, there it is. Sherry, your sound went off her. Okay, go ahead and ask your question again.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Keith, I was just speaking about your son, and I believe that if anyone can get a cure, it will be you, and you definitely have your angel on your side. Would you be able to tell our viewers what your son had and about your foundation?
Absolutely, and thanks so much. That's awesome. So he had a really rare genetic disorder called NKH, which is basically a hypoglycemia condition where it's really rare. So unfortunately, there's not a lot being done in terms of finding a cure. the research isn't getting the funding. It's not for lack of trying, but there's one main specialist that knows the most about it out in Colorado. And, you know, they run out of funding pretty quick. And the government out there in the US kind of gives it to them annually, like a grant. And once that's out, they basically are at the mercy of people donating. And it's such a rare condition that not a lot of people know about it. So the people donating are the ones that are going through it. So, which I think is amazing, because in the US especially, they don't have the healthcare that we have. They pay for everything. So that in itself gets extremely pricey when you have a child constantly going to the hospital and staying there for days on end, because they have to monitor the glycine levels, which is the amino acid that goes to the brain. And basically what NKH is there's a gene that's not functioning, and that gene is supposed to break down the amino acid glycine that goes to the brain. And because it's not functioning, it's not breaking down the glycine, so it goes to the brain in toxic levels. So it takes away any chance of any kind of like mobility or speaking. One of the craziest things that's in the documentary is Madden trying to smile, because they said he won't even be able to do that. Like the brain just will not allow for it. So they have to be fed through like either an NG tube or a G tube directly into the stomach, because they can't swallow. And typically within the first 2 weeks, that's why babies pass, because their throats collapse because there's low muscle tone. So they suffocate essentially. It's just terrible. And of course, seizures are a nonstop. And if they get so much as a cold, that makes the seizures spike. So basically, what they have discovered is that keto diets work best for them, because keto diets, even Navy SEALs have learned that's the one time keto diets are actually beneficial, is they stop seizures. And so they try that, but again, it's only slowing down the process. And they can't find a cure because the medication doesn't permeate the blood-brain barrier, and that's the problem. So it's basically just trying to make them comfortable until they decide that they're done fighting. So it's terrible. And so I'm starting the Madden Taylor Foundation, which that was his middle name, Taylor. Basically because at the start of 2020, I wanted to do it, and there's so much work to be done with the government and everything. So it's going to be a long process, but it'll be the first in Canada that I know of for NKH research, because there's one in the UK and there's a charity in the US, but that's about all I know about. So to my knowledge, I've Googled it too, and I've only found one in UK, one in the US. There's none in Canada so far. So it will be the first, and it's just kind of get Canada in the game a little bit for kind of funding a cure. So hopefully, you know.
And with that, Matt, I want to dedicate this show, because it's very important, to your son. And we're going to have a real hard ending. We get about 20 seconds left. So for Sherry, myself, and Keith, welcome to our family of Movie Reviews and More. The more is the most important part. You see someone else without a smile, please give them one of yours. And this show is dedicated to your son. We will see you next week. Thank you so much.